Welcome to the NonProfit Voice Tech Series, a special edition of the NonProfit Voice podcast, hosted by Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners and editorial advisory board member of NonProfit Pro. In each episode of this monthly installment, Mark will have conversations with prominent nonprofit organizations and industry thought leaders to learn more about different technology offerings in the marketplace. Join us, and together we will learn more about these innovative digital tools and how to navigate the rapidly evolving technology landscape.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners, and I am joined today by Kari Bodell, who's the Vice President of Development Program Strategy. I was invited to start being a guest host of these podcasts to kind of talk about and demystify technology in the nonprofit space. And we're definitely going to cover some of that today. But I thought, to kick it off, being that it's my first podcast with Nonprofit Voices, and it's a kickoff of a new year, and what an incredibly strange journey we've all had in the last year, and probably for the foreseeable future. I thought, what a better guest to have as my first guest, other than Kari, because we kind of started our nonprofit journeys around the same time. So I'm going to let Kari introduce herself, and then we will get started.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Like, Mark is a first-time podcast host. I am a first-time podcast guest. And I've been, like Mark said, the Vice President of Development Program Strategy at Susan G. Komen for a little over 4 months now. And it has been a really interesting time to start a new job and to start at a new organization. And I know that the whole country, the whole planet, is in a really, really strange time in history. The country is certainly in a strange time in history. And I would say our whole industry, from nonprofit fundraising specifically to peer-to-peer, which is what Mark and I do a lot of, is at a really unique time. And I think there's a lot of challenge right now, and there's a ton of opportunity. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing to do this, and be my first guest. So, we started out together at Event 360, an event production company that's still around today, and that was at the beginning of the century, at the turn of the century, as they say, right? not soon after.
It makes us sound old.
Well, I'm old. You started younger than I did. So since that role, I know you've had a variety of other consulting and nonprofits roles. Tell us kind of a high overview of the last, decade and a half.
Sure. I think I'll go back even to Event 360, where we started as an event production and logistics company, and then realized that the event itself wasn't worth much if you couldn't get the right people there and get those people to do the right thing. So very quickly, Event 360 built out participant recruitment, participant fundraising, coaching, all of those support mechanisms. And then I think pretty quickly after that, we also realized that there were some nonprofits that needed our help, but couldn't necessarily afford for us to do all of their event production and logistics, all of their participant support and coaching. But they still needed great advice and great insight from people like you, Mark, who understand the technology that drives all of these programs, from fundraising strategists, from marketing and recruitment strategists. So even inside of Event 360, we formed that consulting division that over time I became a part of. And then after a little while, we took that small consulting division inside of Event 360 and branched out and formed a small group called Plenty Consulting. And similar to Event 360, Plenty exists still today, and they're doing a lot of really great work with social impact, with corporations and nonprofits in mapping their mission, mapping their vision, and really helping those organizations set a roadmap and achieve their potential. So at Plenty, one of my biggest clients was the Avon Breast Cancer Crusade. And this was when Avon the beauty company was operating their own set of fundraising events. This was the Avon 2-Day, became known as the Avon Walk to End Breast Cancer, the Avon 39. And I worked there as the Chief Development Officer for about a year until Avon decided to shift their philanthropic priorities and invest in American Cancer Society making strides against breast cancer. So kept consulting with Avon for a little while, went to an agency formerly known as Lead Dog Marketing that then became CSM Marketing, and really traditional roots in sports marketing, entertainment marketing, but also a very, very strong background in nonprofit events, large scale productions, and was the vice president of social impact there for several years. And just recently, like I said, started with Susan G. Komen. So throughout all of those adventures, the consulting work, the nonprofit work, the work inside of a big global marketing firm, my passion has always been doing good, helping corporations do good, helping nonprofits do good, and doing that through relationships. And that's why I love peer-to-peer so much, is because, it's all based on relationships. And those relationships have had to evolve this year as we've tried to figure out how do we maintain strong relationships in this crazy, crazy environment.
Yeah, no, well said. And kind of full circle, right? You're at Komen now, where they used to be a client of Event 360. I believe they still are a client of Event 360. And yeah, so well done. So looking back at 2020, in your new role, development program strategy. So tell us more about what that means, right?
Sure. So development program strategy, I think the key words there are, well, the first word is programs. So this is anything that has an experiential component, anything that has a programmatic component. I've got great colleagues that oversee our sponsorship department, direct mail, major giving, planned gifts, all of our other fundraising channels. So my department works on all of Komen's fundraising channels that are programmatic or experiential. And the development attached on there just means they got to raise money. And not only do we have to be strategic, so the development program strategy, but my team deals with all the operations as well. And we really are dependent on another team, and that's our community development staff, our local fundraisers in the markets, to actually bring these programs to life. So it's things like certainly the Komen's flagship signature events, the Race for the Cure, the More Than Pink Walk, the Komen 3-Day series, as well as more locally based programs. This is our Rally for the Cure program, which is our golf program, galas, luncheons, brunches, our pink tie guys, our big wigs. So all of the other experiential programs that are happening in the field. So I think you were going to ask me a question, and then you said, hey, tell us what this job really is.
Well, yeah, and that's great. So that ties in perfectly to my question, which is, how do you and how does Komen look back at 2020 as far as your programs go? I mean, I know for the industry, it's a mixed bag and mostly down if in-person or peer-to-peer campaigns, for example, actually happened at all, which many didn't. They were happy if they got 40% of the funds raised. That was considered a success, but they also quite often saved money in event production if it wasn't already a sunk cost, if it's too early in the season, that kind of thing. So as much as you can share, how do you and Susan G. Komen look at 2020?
So I think the first thing I'll mention, Mark, is what you said. Susan G. Komen is right on that trend of all of our experiential programs were certainly down. Our expenses were also down. The great news is that they were not as far down as we anticipated they might be in May and June and July, when we just didn't know what was going to happen, how long things were going to go on, how our audiences would respond. So, we've got one set of worst case scenario. And I think the great news, and I've talked with a lot of peers in the industry, is, and Komen is right here, wasn't the worst case scenario that we had all been planning as a possibility back in, like I said, the late spring, early summer. Our expenses were down as well. What we haven't been able to do, though, is generate the same net revenue that we would have generated in a normal year. So yes, our revenue is down and our expenses are down, which is fantastic, because we'd all be in a lot of trouble if we'd spent the same amount of money to raise a lot less. But I still really believe in the power of experiences and the power of people coming together, standing in the same park, looking at people who care about something that they care about, sharing that moment. And it's the lead up to that that lets us fundraise. So while we did, I think, as well as anyone possibly could have done this year, and when I say we, I mean collectively us as an industry, I really believe that once we're able to, everyone's going to want to get back outside and back out to these gatherings where we can really celebrate these causes and honor the people impacted by these causes together. Now, that's not to say that we won't continue to have digital, virtual, hybrid extensions of these programs, because I think one of the big things we've learned is, first, what do they say? Crisis is the mother of innovation and invention, or necessity is the mother of invention. I think the whole industry iterated really, really rapidly in the late spring and early summer. And we learned there are some things that we should have been doing all along to make the tentacles of these programs reach further, to bring more people along, to make it more accessible in different ways. And even when we go back to in-person events with thousands of people crammed together, breathing on each other, I know that we'll continue to have, again, some of these things that can come to life anywhere on any time frame. Choose your own adventure, do it from the comfort of your own neighborhood, because some people like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have other clients like Ride for Roswell that, really big bike ride, regional, local bike ride, raises usually like over 5 million, I believe it was. Everything is about being in person, but they had to get they really wanted to have the event. It obviously couldn't happen the way it was, but they went not only just virtual, but they also offered up the, option for some smaller in-person sprint kind of events, So yeah, definitely a lot of creativity out there, a lot of things to help that people still feel connected. And it is an opportunity for a lot of organizations. I think it was eye-opening that they finally really looked at their technology and their online presence with some fresh eyes and go, wow, it's time for a revamp. I mean, in a lot of cases, it was years, overdue in happening, but whatever forces the issue for folks to realize that investments in technology are probably your cheapest way to reach the most number of people and try to get your branding across the right way. So I totally agree.
Absolutely. And the technology has to be friendly too. That's one thing we learned. We had a few bumps in the road where some pieces of our technology weren't talking to each other. And listen, like our customers, our supporters are used to things happening lightning fast with one click. And if I can't do it easily, I'm not going to do it at all. And these standards are being set by the for-profit world and all of the other platforms that our customers interface with on a day-to-day basis. So when they hit our technology and it's clunky or not intuitive, or the left part of the technology doesn't know what the right part of the technology is doing, we'll hear about it. We'll hear about it loud and clear. So I think that's another piece when everything gets driven to be dependent on the technology. You've got to make sure that your technology is, as, like I said, as friendly as possible.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, and to the point of kind of, responding to the environment, Cathexis Partners, we've been virtual since the beginning before it was cool. So, nothing different for us. In fact, I haven't worked in an office since early 2004. I don't know what I would do if I had to go to an office, but a lot of people do enjoy that. But this whole pandemic and everything has shown a lot of organizations that people can still be productive from everywhere. So I know that Komen is. It sounds like you're going virtual. I don't know. Would love to hear if that was kind of due to the pandemic that kind of pushed that, or was that happening anyways as part of the overall restructuring that's also going on?
Yeah, that's maybe even a little bit before my time. So I don't know that I know, but my understanding is that it was the pandemic that really accelerated things like the move to go virtual. And, so far we're finding that we're able to connect really well. We're able to conduct a lot of business. We certainly miss like everybody on the planet, except maybe for you, Mark. We miss the hallway chatter and the water cooler catch-ups, but overall, we're finding it to be a really productive environment. And again, it's only possible because of good technology.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Huge. Yeah. Technology is, key to that. Like you said, it's, this gave people no other choice but to experiment with it. And then you realize, oh, wait, it's not that bad. And I think for organizations, for their campaigns, now is the time to try something new, try a new platform, try a new a way of doing things, because everything is turned upside down. Not to be overly dramatic, but it's true. Everybody's life has significantly been altered, at least temporarily, by this. So
Yeah.
when people are kind of responding to change anyways, now's the time to try something different. And it sounds like you all over at Komen are doing a variety of things, and would love to hear kind of what you can share about your 2021 campaigns and programs, and what you're looking at doing this year that's kind of still dealing with this in between purgatory state that we're in, right? How are you looking at the year with your programs?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the Ride for Roswell, and I think a lot of the more traditional walk and race programs are keeping an eye on the cycling space, because the cycling space they're able to keep a little more socially distanced just by virtue of being on a bicycle. So I know that a lot of them are out ahead of where I think a lot of the walk programs are, with saying we're going to do smaller events. There's a digital component, but we've got a smaller satellite event that you can actually come to. We're going to have staggered start times and let cyclists go one at a time every 2 minutes. So, we're certainly watching the cycling space and trying to figure out what key lessons can we take from what they're doing in the live events right now. A couple things that we've got in the works right now. The first is on our Race for the Cure and More Than Pink Walk series. That's our largest series. And during a normal year, we would have over 100 of those events across the country. The first thing that we've noticed, and I think they're smart, each of the local markets can set either a spring date or a fall date. And most of our local markets have opted to set a fall date. So right now, our spring race and walk series will be very, very small. And our fall race and walk series will be a lot bigger, which the fantastic news there is that gives us a little bit more time to watch the marketplace, to watch the landscape of how the pandemic is shaping up or hopefully shaping down, and then make some better, more creative, more interesting programmatic decisions than we were able to make last summer going into the fall. I think the whole industry, and I put Komen in this bucket, did a really, really nice job of pivoting programs on a moment's notice last year. And, lots of good engagement, lots of interesting things. And I know that our customers will expect something different from us next fall. So we can't just say, oh yeah, we're running the same virtual program that we built in a month a year later. So we really are putting some time and investment into figuring out, first of all, what will we be able to do by the fall? And second, knowing that as a public health charity, we will be on the more conservative side. We're not going to be the first ones out there gathering together in a group of 1,000 people. So we want to be able to provide options for our supporters that let them do what they're comfortable with. And like I mentioned before, a little bit of a choose your own time, choose your own adventure, and need to make sure that it also delivers that component of connecting with a community of supporters and people who care about the same cause you care about. So candidly, we're very much in product development for what we'll be offering this fall for the races and walks, but we believe it needs to have a smaller, I call it hybrid, in-person opportunity for people to connect in smaller ways that feel safe to their neighborhood, to their pod, and we're really excited about that. On the other end, we have our Susan G. Komen 3-day, and that's a 3-day 60-mile walk that takes place in a limited number of markets. It's just 4 markets, but with 3 days and 60 miles, it's a really different proposition than a 5K or a walk around the city park. So we're being really strategic right now about how do we keep that event safe? How do we keep that event? The spirit of that event is really special, and it's really fun, and it's really interesting. And to just say, oh yeah, we'll do that virtually is not really an option for us. So right now we're planning on doing the 3-day events in person this fall, and just working really closely with Event 360, who you mentioned before, to make sure that we're doing that in a safe and way that won't jeopardize the health of our supporters and the communities that we serve. So very optimistic again about what we'll be seeing this fall.
Yeah, I agree that you can't bring that passion of the 3-day to a virtual environment. I mean, that's what got me actually, literally got me into the nonprofit space in the first place. I used to volunteer for the 3-day when Pilata Teamworks was still running it back in the late 90s. See, now I'm really dating myself. This is the previous, and that's what got me into this in the first place. And if you haven't ever done a 3-day walk, and if you have anybody that's ever been affected by breast cancer, or even if not, you just want to help the cause, I think you need to go out, participate, or volunteer, or crew on that. And it's kind of life changing. It's not to put too fine of a point on it, or again over dramatize, but yeah, it's definitely something to experience. And hopefully you can get out there and do that again in 2021.
Yeah, I agree, Mark. It's the same thing. It's what brought me to this industry as a crew member for the 3-day way back in the day. And I won't go all the way back to the 90s, but I will go back to 2001, which is the first time I crewed a 3-day event. And there's something really special about that again can't be captured and conveyed through a digital app.
Right. Speaking of apps, yeah, anything, you guys at Komen, you use TeamRaiser, I think you use Boundless Fundraising and a variety of different, you're kind of tech forward, obviously. Anything new planned? Anything, what are you seeing as successes? What anything you're testing out? Anything that's kind of catching your eye in the industry these days?
Yeah, so last year we added Boundless Motion to the Boundless Fundraising, and that was how we did our Race for the Cure and More Than Pink Walk step tracking. And people were able to download the app, or hopefully they already had the app, but if they didn't, they could do their fundraising and their step tracking all in one place. And that was important to us. Again, we didn't want to have to direct our customers to go in too many different directions. So having a one-stop shop was important to us. And in the future, we're considering lots of different types of technologies right now. We've actually got a working group that, again, is thinking about everything that we'll have in place for the fall. And technology is certainly very high on that list.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know that we're going to check out a little app I've been keeping an eye on called Let's All Do Good. That's coming out later this month with some geolocating that I think is very interesting. Where once you get within a certain number of feet of something, you can get a push notification if you have the app. So I think that could really do well in scavenger hunts, but also even just physical or virtual events that have a preset route. If you're getting near the start, it opens up an opening ceremonies video, or if you get near a sponsor, it provides a code to a discount or free water or something like that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool things happening now that are getting even more advanced because of what's going on around us. So interesting days indeed. And it's all about looking for the opportunities and, with everything else considered, right?
Yeah, exactly. And making sure that we're, again, like I said at the top, creating an experience for our supporters that meets them where they are, when they are, that feels seamless and intuitive to them, that doesn't require them to do something on a website and then do something on Facebook and then do something in the first app and then do something in 2 other apps and download the QR code reader and then bring it back to the first website. I mean, it can get very convoluted and complicated. And so always thinking about the customer journey, how does it work for our supporters, and what are they most interested in? We've just finished a round of surveying and focus groups, and really looking for our supporters to tell us how we can continue to evolve these programs in ways that are exciting and meaningful. And look, at the end of the day, they have to be programs that inspire fundraising.
Yeah, for sure. That's what it's all about, right? Well, congrats on the new role. Thank you for chatting with me today. And any final thoughts about 2021 or anything else?
I'm excited to see where the industry goes. And I think the peer-to-peer space has needed a little bit of a shakeup for a while. And, not that I'm saying there's anything good about this pandemic, but there are some unintended benefits that have us thinking differently about how we operate in so many different ways. And I think this is the push that a lot of us have needed to rethink how we're building these programs, how we're operating these programs. Don't even get me started on the DIY space. Ask me back next month and we'll talk about that. But it's exciting to see where we'll be in a year.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's meet up again when they actually have in-person conferences, and I'll get you a drink and we can talk about all the successes. But thanks again for your time today, Kari.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Nonprofit Voice. You can listen to more episodes of The Nonprofit Voice at nonprofitpro.com/podcast/the-nonprofit-voice. And remember, for your convenience, you can stream any and all episodes of The Nonprofit Voice on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. And finally, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can find those links down below.